I'm going to start with our sponsors, as I say, a minute or two early. And then by then we'll just about be ready. Hopefully the other guys will be getting on for the actual shiur. Okay. Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Koningsberg in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Reuven ben Labish, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nissen Hara Nissen ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg, in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann, in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. The many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram ben Shimon, Shall assure her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva, Marsha Federbush and family in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel ben Harav Shimon. A month of learning by Gila and Harold Saltzman in memory of her mother, Eti bat Yitzchak Elchanan, by Chaim and Phyllis Reese, in memory of his father, Mordechai ben Yom Tov Lipa, by Phyllis and Chaim Reese, in memory of her father, Pinchas ben Avraham. A week of learning by Ron and Susan Podolsky, in memory of his mother, Fredel bas Shraga Feivel, and today a day of learning sponsored by Esther and Abe Schwartz and Sam and Sarah Bergman, in memory of Esther and Sam's mother, Elka bas Ephraim. May the Shembas have an Aliyah, Kranka Rafia, Velta Yashir Shem Matzliah, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Gaben Shtiyar. Okay. All right. We are on Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph. We got a fair bit of Gemara to try to cover a bit today. We ended yesterday very quickly with the fact that there was a question about Rabbi Yehuda and when or when not he would allow for a gzeira, okay, to prohibit or to permit items, okay? And an example was brought, okay, that in regards to Chadash, new products, time of the Omer versus Chometz. And so we're going to pick up today on line 4 on Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, okay? Amar Rava says, Rava, Shani Chadash, mitoch shelo hitarta lo ela al yedei kituf, hu zachur. Says Rava, the reason that there's no contradiction, he says, is because Rabbi Yehuda didn't need the gezerah in regards to new produce, because it was only permitted to be plucked as opposed to normal harvest. And as a result of the shinui, okay, therefore he would remember that he could not eat it from that grain. Amar le Abai, says Abai, tenach b'shat katifa. Fine, that, says Abai, that explanation applies during the time of the plucking. Okay. However, tchina v'harkada, if you're talking about the time of the grinding and the time of the sifting, ma'ika lememar, what do you have to say in regards to that? Right? Ha lo kasha, says Rava. Right? Namely, what happens? He says, Rava. Okay. Tchina b'rechaya haydiyad, that when it comes time to doing the grinding, they could only do it with a hand mill, okay, and not with use of flour that was ground, let's say, by a mill that was driven by water or driven by an animal, okay? Harkada, in regards to the sifting, al gav nafa, that was done on the top of the sieve, on the top of the sifter, and not inside. Okay? So again, we see that because there was shinui, right? That would mean that the person would not know it could be eaten in the normal manner. Elaha ditznan kotzrin beit hashlachayim v'sheba amakim. So again, the Gemara raises the problem, a challenge. Well, what about a situation, a case is Abaye, where we say that the person can harvest in those fields that are irrigated, or those fields that were in valleys? Okay, that seems to imply that that's the normal. They can use normal methods of harvesting, right? Normal methods of grinding and sifting, etc. Aval lo godshin, but there we're not permitted to pile or to stack the grain, right? V'okimna k'Rabbi Yehuda, and there we hold according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda. My ikalamemar, what are you going to say then? Abaye says to him, okay, that Rabbi Yehuda seems to permit normal practice there and doesn't make a gezerah. Okay, El Amar Abaye, but rather Abaye offers another explanation. Okay, the following: Chadash b'dil minei, that produce that is new. Okay, new grain. A person is going to separate oneself from it. They know if it's brand new, they can't eat it till a certain time. Chametz lo b'dil minei, but chametz, a person may not necessarily separate themselves. He's used to eating it, right? It's around all the time. And so therefore, okay, that's the point. Rava responds, Amar Rava, the Rebbe Yehuda ad the Rebbe Yehuda kasha. Okay, says Rava. So you seem to imply that there's a problem with one view or one statement of Rebbe Yehuda and another. The Rabbanan ad the Rabbanan lo kasha. Do we say here that in regards to statements of the rabbis, that there's no problem with their views? Okay, is that what you're saying? So he's going to go on now and explain that to us. The Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbi Yehuda lo kasha, with regards to the two issues with Rabbi Yehuda, whether he makes a gezerah or doesn't make the gezerah, kedishaninan, as we've taught already. Okay? The Rabbanan, nami lo kasha. With rabbis versus the opinion of the rabbis, there also doesn't have to be a contradiction there. Okay, why is that the case? Who, okay, atzmo mechazer alav lesorfo, he says, namely that he himself is going to look for the chametz in order to burn it. Mechal ka'achil minei. Okay, is he going to eat from it after that? Okay. Now, Rav Ashi is going to come and try to bring a different explanation to the contradiction we find with Rabbi Yehuda's opinions. Rav Ashi Amar, the Rabbi Yehuda ad the Rabbi Yehuda lo kasha. Okay, again, he says there's no problem with the statement of where Rabbi Yehuda might require a gezerah regarding chametz and no gezerah regarding chadash. Kemach v'keli tznan. Our Mishnah specifically taught it in regards to flour and roasted grains. That's what it's taught. So now the Gemara is going to respond to Rav Ashi's suggested answer. Ha de Rav Ashi bidutahi. This statement of Rav Ashi is really a mistake. It's fictitious. Hatenach maklei ve'elech. Okay, you might say that it was Mikeli. It might say it was appropriate once the grain is already roasted, and beyond that, me'ikara. But earlier, in other words, originally, ad keli until that grain is roasted. My ikalamema. What are you going to say then? V'chitema. And if you want to say al yadei kituf kidaraba, that what makes the difference here is the method of harvesting, plucking, as Rava suggested, ela kotzrin beit hashlachim v'sheba'amakim. But we have another Mishnah that says it is permitted to do the normal method of harvesting in fields that are irrigated or in fields that are in valleys. Vo kimna k'Rabbi Yehuda. And we hold this, we establish this according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Mai ikalamema. So what do you have to say about that? In that situation. Ela de Rav Ashi bedutahi. But rather we must say that Rav Ashi's explanation is fictitious, is incorrect, right? So the point is, it seems that we have to accept Abaye's view that that there is a decree, according to Rabbi Yehuda, okay, on something where people are used to using it, like the chametz, but not on something else where people might normally separate themselves, like the new grain. Okay, kol heicha delo badil minei, and any place, okay, where a person does not normally refrain, separate themselves, migazar Rabbi Yehuda. We ask the question then, does it seem then that Rabbi Yehuda is going to make a decree? V'hatnan, but aren't we taught elsewhere in a Mishnah? Lo yikov adam shvoferet shel beitzah, that a person should not pierce an eggshell, okay? V'yimalena shemen, and fill it up with oil. V'yitnena b'tzad haner, and put it by the side of a lamp, I'm going to say here, so that the oil can drip in and have a flow. B'shvil shetehei min hatefet, so that it will sort of drip in, right? And therefore continue to run the lamp, to do that on Shabbat. Va'afilo hi shel cheres, even if the lamp itself is made of earthenware. V'Rabbi Yehuda matir, and Rabbi Yehuda, on the other hand, permits this practice. Okay? He doesn't make a decree against that, right? So the Gemara wants to now tell us, excuse me, Hatam, there in that case, Mishum Chumra de Shabbos Mavdil Badili, because of the stringencies of Shabbat, people are more apt to detach themselves, separate themselves from something that's prohibited. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda didn't feel it was necessary to make a gezerah in that situation. Now, so Gemara wants to go on and points out, Varami de Shabbat a Shabbat. But then we seem to have a contradiction between one Shabbos law or one Shabbos ruling and another. Tanya. Why? Because we have a Braita that teaches the following. Chavel dalei shenifsak. If we have the rope that's usually used to lowering a pail into a well, and the rope breaks on Shabbos, lo yehe koshro ela anvo. One is not permitted to retie it, but instead only do so with a bow. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, korech olav punda upaskaya. Rabbi Yehuda says, in that case, one can only attach, I'm saying, to that broken rope, either some sort of money belt or some sort of a sash. Ubilvad shalo ya'anvenu. But only so long as, again, he connects the two with a loop, okay, with a bow, and not with a direct knot. Okay? Therefore, says the Gemara, Kasha the Rabbi Yehuda ad the Rabbi Yehuda. Kasha the Rabbanan ad the Rabbanan. Here again, we seem to have a problem with Rabbi Yehuda's views and a problem with the opinion of the rabbis as well. Okay? Why? Because the rabbis, if they disagree with Rabbi Yehuda, implies that they seem to allow tying of something, right? Now the Gemara then continues. The Rabbanan lo kasha. Regarding the opinions of the rabbis, they don't have to contradict. Why? Says the Gemara. In the case we saw before, shemen b'shemen michlif. People can become confused with oil and think, oh, I can take oil from here, I can take oil from there and use it. Aniva b'kshera lo michlif. But regards the difference between tying a bow and tying a knot, people aren't going to get confused. Okay? And therefore, he didn't require the gezerah in that situation. The Rabbi Yehuda ad the Rabbi Yehuda lo kasha. And in regards to Rabbi Yehuda also, there's no problem. Tama the Rabbi Yehuda, lav mishum de gezar aniva atu kshira, because the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda is not because he makes the decree, being concerned that if people are allowed to tie bows, the less they come and tie knots. Ella, rather, mishum de kasavar aniva gufa ksherahi, because Rabbi Yehuda must be of the opinion that even tying a bow is basically similar to tying a knot in that situation. Okay? All right. Now, Varami Rabbanan ad the Rabbanan. And now we see there's going to be another concern about a contradiction on Shabbat and regarding the views of the rabbis. Namely the following. Ditnan, it was taught in the Mishnah, Koshrin Dli Papiskaya, that one can tie the broken rope, right, for the pulley, for the pail, with a sash. Okay? That seems to be what it seems to be saying, right? Aval lo b'chevel, but not with a rope. Rabbi Yehuda matir, and Rabbi Yehuda seems to permit it. Chevel dema, what kind of rope are we talking about here? Ilema chevel da'alma, if we're talking about a rope in general. Rabbi Yehuda matir, and Rabbi Yehuda permits it. Kesha shel kaimahu, then the result is you've got a, what I'll call a more permanent kind of knot, right? That seems to be the problem, which is prohibited. Divadai ate levtule, that certainly Rabbi Yehuda would come to nullify it, right? Ela pshita, the gardai, but rather we're talking about the kind of rope that belongs to a weaver, okay? The Gazru Rabbanan, and the rabbis made a gezerah. Chevel de garde, atu chevel de alma. That would they say that using a weaver's rope to retie this pulley, okay, might that lead to using a general rope? Really? And yes, says the Gemara, chevel bechevel michlif. One kind of rope and another kind of rope, people might mix up. They might be confused. Aniva b'kshira lo michlefa. But the difference between a bow and a knot, people are not going to get confused. V'kol heicha de badil mine lo gazar Rabbi Yehuda. In any situation where the people will normally separate themselves, right? Rabbi Yehuda doesn't feel it's necessary to make a gezerah. Okay, now let's pick up. Vahat Tanya. But wait a second, says the Gemara. We're taught elsewhere in a Braita. Bechor she'achazod dam. Okay, let's say we have a firstborn animal. Okay, and that firstborn animal is has a blood problem, right? The blood is constrained in the animal, and normally one would do bloodletting, okay, whether for animals or for people in that situation. But because it's a bechor, remember, our concern is you can't allow anything to happen to the animal that will result in a mum. Therefore, the Gemara says, but it's taught in a Braita, bechor she'achazod dam, afilu hu mate, even if the animal were to die because of this, let's call it blood congestion, okay? If he's left unattended, afilu hu mate, ein mekizim lo dam divrei Rabbi Yehuda. We don't do any bloodletting in this situation, according to Rabbi Yehuda. V'chachamim amrim yakiz. But sages say one can do bloodletting, ubilvad shelo yatil bo mum, but only so long as one does not cause a blemish on the animal, right? Yet Rabbi Yehuda prohibits it. Okay? So what answer can we say applies here, right? So can't say because person is going to badil mineh that a person is going to separate. It's not a common thing. So perhaps the reason is hatam mitoch she'adam bahul. Perhaps a person is in turmoil, is confused, al mamano. He's concerned over the possible loss of money. As we turn to the top of Yud Aleph Amud Beis, Amrinen. So we say, Isharit le b'makom she'ein osin bo umum. If you permit him to draw the blood in a place or in a situation where it doesn't cause a blemish, maybe, okay, he might come to make the cut, the incision in the animal, that a place would be considered a mum. V'rabanan kol shekain. And the rabbis, okay, how much more so? The ilo sharit le klal, that if you don't permit him whatsoever, he may nevertheless come to do it anyway, right? So the Gemara then continues. Umi amrinan Rabbi Yehuda adam bahul al mamono. Do we really going to say that the reason Rabbi Yehuda prohibits it here, okay, parallel to making a decree, okay, is that a person becomes so verhitzt, okay, so over, right, about his money? Vahatnan. But isn't it taught elsewhere, okay, in another Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ein mikadrin habehema biyom tov mipnei shehu oseh chavura. That Rabbi Yehuda is telling us one is not permitted to scrape an animal with a metal comb, okay, lest it result in the wounds on the animal. Okay. Aval mikartsafim. but one is permitted to scratch the animal with a wooden comb. Okay? Now the Gemara is going to ask in a moment, what's the difference between these two procedures, okay, and these two instruments? Apparently, the metal comb is one that digs deeper into below the hairline, so to speak, of the animal, and therefore to remove insects could cause wounds. The wooden comb, okay, just goes through I'll call it surface hair of the animal. But we're going to see in a moment. The Chachamim Omrim, and the sages say, Ein Mikadrin, Af Ein Mikar Tzafin. One can neither comb, right, scrape with a metal comb, nor scratch with a wooden comb. Okay? And then another Braita following with this Mishnah teaches, V'tanya, Ezahu Kidur, Ve'ezahu Kartsuf. What does we mean when we say scraping? I'll put it that way. And what do we mean when we say scratching? Kidur, Ketanin, V'osin Chabura. Okay? That the scraping method has smaller teeth. Therefore, those teeth, okay, go deeper and they can cause a wound. Kartsuf, Gedolim. The teeth on the wooden comb are larger. Ve'enosin Chabura. And they don't make any kind of a wound. Now the Gemara wants to try to say, is there some way that we can draw an understanding from this? Hatam, there. In other words, when we were talking about the firstborn, the Ishavik lay meat. There, okay, if he did nothing about that firstborn animal, the result would be he would leave it to die. Amrinan Adam Bahul al Mamono. There we say that a person can become, fahitz, can become upset, angry, concerned about his money. Hacha, in this case, okay, in our case here, Ishavikle, if he leaves it alone and does nothing to the animal, Sara Ba'almahu. Yes, that causes some suffering in general to the animal, but it doesn't result in a person becoming all worked up and all fahitzed and all upset and angry, etc., in turmoil. Lo amrinan adam bahul al mamano. We don't say there that a person becomes in turmoil about his money. The Rabbi Yehuda, and as far as Rabbi Yehuda goes, we're going to ask the following. Ma'ishna gabi chametz de gazar, or ma'ishna gabi kartsuf de lo gazar? So as far as Rabbi Yehuda is concerned, what is so, I'm going to use the word unique, different, in regards to the issue of chametz, that he would make a gezerah there, and what is so different or unique in regards to this issue of combing, even with the wooden comb, that he wouldn't make a gezerah? Okay, the answer is, says the Gemara, lechem belechem michlaf, kidur bekartsuf lo michlaf. Namely, that one can confuse bread with bread. In other words, what we're saying is that he can get confused when he sees, let's say, some leaven, whether that's matzah leaven, leftover crumbs from matzah, or leftover crumbs from bread, which he's used to throughout the year. But in regards to a metal comb versus a wooden comb, lo machlif, he would not become confused, okay, in that situation, and therefore he would not require the gzera. Okay? All right. We go on now to our new Mishnah. Okay? Now, in this new Mishnah, okay, we get a sort of a brand new topic. Okay? We've talked about when the Bedika is to carry out, right? And we understand that is the case. Now, think of the following. Imagine you have a clock, okay? 24-hour clock, okay? But that clock is divided into segments, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, from starting going counterclockwise, okay? All right? Counterclockwise, 1 down to 12, and then 12 back up to 24, okay? Now, in this clock, we understand that the Gemara is going to use the term hour, but it's not our 60-minute hour. It's a time measurement that we're calling an hour, but it's really what I'm going to call variable or flexible hour, because it's based on the amount of daylight and darkness based on the season. So in the summer, right, we're going to have more daylight hours. So in quotes, an hour is going to run longer. Okay? In the winter, when we have less daylight hours, right, a quote hour is going to be shorter. So that's what I mean by flexible, okay, or hours, okay? They're not fixed, right? And this is the rabbinic question of when we say, at what point in the hour of the day is something permitted or prohibited, okay? It's not like we have. It's as if you take the amount of daylight, you divide that up, say, by 12, and that gives you your time frame of what a rabbinic flexible hour is, okay? So having just put that out as an intro a little bit to help us now with the next Mishnah, okay? Matnitin. Our Mishnah says, Rabbi Meir Omer, according to Rabbi Meir, Ochlim kol chamesh, one can eat chometz the first 5 hours, v'sorfin b'tchilat sheish, and we burn it at the beginning of the 6th hour. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda, Ochlin kol arba, we can eat chometz all 4 hours. V'tolin kol chamesh, and we put it aside in abeyance. It's in limbo, so to speak, the 5th hour. V'sofin b'tchilat sheish, and we burn it at the beginning of the 6th hour. Furthermore, va'od amar Rabbi Yehuda, and he said something else, the following: Shtei chalot shel toda psulot. If we have 2 Todah offering loaves that are no longer valid, they used to leave them out. Munachot al gabe ha'itztaba. They were put out on a bench in the temple precinct. Kol zman shemunachot. So long as both loaves were there. Kol ha'am ochlin. The entire people knew that they could eat chometz. Nitla echat. When one of the loaves was taken, tolin, people knew it was in abeyance. Lo ochlin, they could not eat v'lo sofin, but they couldn't burn it yet either. Nitlu shtehen, if both loaves were taken, Hitchilu kol ha'am sorfi. Then all of the nation, all the people knew that was the time to burn the chametz. Now, still part of our Mishnah, Rabban Gamliel Omer, he says as follows, clarifying qualification. Chulin ne'echalin kol arba. Chulin, okay, non-sacred foodstuffs, okay, could be eaten throughout the 4 hours of the morning. Utruma kol chamesh. And kodshim, produce that is kodesh, could be eaten during the 5th hour. V'sorfin b'tchilat sheish. And we burn that at the beginning of the 6th hour. Now, Gemara wants to know the following. Snan hatam. It was taught there. In other words, in regards to a different case, we're going to compare our machloket of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda to another machloket of the two of them and see if they're parallel. So that's what the Gemara is about to do. Okay? In this other dispute, it's in regards to giving testimony, okay, in regards to either seeing the new moon, okay, at a certain time. Echad omer, right, b'shnayim b'chodesh. One said it was on the 2nd day of the month. Ve'echad omer b'shlosha. And one witness comes and says it was on the 3rd day of the month. Says the Mishnah, Edutan kayemet. Their testimony is still upheld, is still valid. Shezeh yodea ba'iburo shel chodesh. Because one of the witnesses was aware of the fact that the rabbis had intercalated the month. In other words, instead of saying it was a 29-day month, it was a 30-day month. And the other witness maybe was not aware of the fact that the rabbis had intercalated the month. Okay. Echad omer b'shlosha. One says it was on the 3rd. Ve'echad omer b'chamisha. And one says that it was on the 5th day of the month. Edutan b'tela. Then their testimony is invalid.
Right.
Okay. Now, let's say they're giving testimony in another situation. Not so much on the month, on the day, okay, but an event that took place at a certain time of day. Echad omer b'shtei sha'ot. One said it occurred at 2nd hours of the day. Ve'echad omer b'shalosh sha'ot. And one said it occurred in the 3rd hour of the day. Edutan kayemet. Their testimony is valid. Echad omer b'shalosh. One says it was the 3rd. Ve'echad omer b'chamesh. And one says it was the 5th hour of the day. Edutan b'tela. Their testimony is invalid. Divrei Rabbi Meir. That's the view of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda omer edutan kayemet. Rabbi Yehuda says, even in that last case, okay, of what would appear to be a major difference, right, between 3 and 5, their testimony is still valid. Okay. Why? Echad omer b'chamesh, ve'echad omer b'sheva. But if one says that the incident occurred in the 5th hour and one in the 7th hour, edutan b'tela, their testimony is invalid. Shebechamesh chama b'mizrach, because in the 5th hour the sun is still in the east. Ubesheva chama b'ma'arav, and in the 7th hour the sun is already in the west. Amar Abaye, and so Abaye says, Kashetimtza lomar the divrei Rabbi Meir. If you're examining the words of Rabbi Meir, ein adam to'eh v'lo klum. According to the view of Rabbi Meir, a person does not make a mistake whatsoever. The divrei Rabbi Yehuda, according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda, Adam to'eh chatzi sha'ah. A person could make an error more of half an hour, more or less. The divrei Rabbi Meir, according to the view of Rabbi Meir, ein adam to'eh v'lo klum. A person doesn't make an error whatsoever. Ma'aseh ki hava b'mefag tarte. This incident occurred at the exit of the third hour. Uma'il, at the exit of, the second hour. Uma'il tlat, and comes then at the beginning or the beginning of the third hour. V'hadek amar shtayim, and the fact that one witness said 2, b'sof shtayim, it was the end of the second hour. V'hadek amar shalosh, and that one said it was 3, but chilat shalosh, it happened at the beginning of the third hour. The divrei Rabbi Yehuda, according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda, adam to'eh chatzi sha'ah. A person could be off as much as a half hour. Ma'aseh ki hava, in regarding to this incident that occurred, bepalga da'arba hava, it occurred at the middle of the 3.5 hours. V'hai dika amar shalosh, b'sof shalosh, and the fact that he said 3, it was towards the end of the third hour. V'katai palga d'sha'ata l'kamei, and he made a mistake of about a half hour. V'hai dika amar chamesh b'tchilat chamesh, and the fact that when he said 5, it could have been he was thinking the beginning of the 5th hour. V'katai palga d'sha'ata l'achore, and maybe he was made a mistake about a half hour later. Now the Gemara tells us, Ika da'amre, but there are those, however, who tell us this way. Amar Abai, this is Abai's second explanation. Okay, Kashetimtzo lamar the divrei Rabbi Meir, when you find the thinking or view of Rabbi Meir, Adam to'em mashu, a person might make a slight error. But divrei Rabbi Yehuda, according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda, Adam to'eh sha'a umashu. A person could make an error an hour plus. The divrei Rabbi Meir Adam to'eh mashu. The view of Rabbi Meir that a person makes a slight error, ma'aseh ki hava, when this incident occurred, o b'sof shtayim hava, it was either the end of the second hour, or b'tchilat shalosh, or the beginning of the third hour. V'chad minayu to'eh mashu, and one of them made a slight mistake. The divrei Rabbi Yehuda, according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda, Adam to'eh sha'a umashu, a person can make a mistake as much as of an hour plus. Ma'aseh ki hava, and this incident that occurred, o b'sof shalosh, o b'tchilat chamesh, it was either the end of the third hour or the beginning of the 5th hour. V'chad minayu katai sha'am umashu, and one of them made an error of an hour plus. Okay, that's where we're going to stop today, because then we go into challenges to these explanations of Abaye. Okay, and we'll have to keep in mind there's different lashon. There's the earlier first explanation and the second explanation. Okay? All right. Okay, everybody take care and stay well. All right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Be well, everybody.
Thank you.
Who's that?